Today I'd like to talk about Building 7, otherwise known as the smoking gun of 9/11. Forget the indestructible passports. Forget the NORAD exercises. Forget the Pentagon 270-degree downward corkscrew dive with zero wreckage. Building 7 should have raised eyebrows.
Well, no. That's...
For the love of God, Bill, just give up. Your retarded little stance on everything. It's so tiresome. I'm a cool guy. Listen to me. Smoke pot. Off a guy. Enough, Bill.
China is putting gay chemicals in the vapes, coupled with fruity pina colada flavoring agents. Many nicotine enjoyers in this country are on the business end of an all-out circus of predatory endocrine warfare. Life isn't meant to be a strawberry margarita sideshow for flamers, okay?
Weaponized retardation. She's the poster child for it, and we've known it for years, totally tard-maxing. But back to the matter at hand. The left in our country only makes up about 5% of the population. It's true, you've got the psychopaths calling the plays, power-hungry sociopaths in middle management, and mouth-breathing simpletons, mostly illiterate, I might add, as the foot soldiers.
Listen, the truth is, every 6 years, your dollar loses half its buying power. That means $100,000 today could feel like $50,000 by 2031. Prices are going up and your dollar is going down. But you can protect the value of your savings with something real, something proven. Gold, an asset that holds its value over time. At Noble Gold Investments, they make it simple to protect your savings with physical gold or silver. No high-pressure sales, no call centers, just honest guidance, one-on-one support, and transparent pricing. And right now, when you open a qualified account, Noble Gold will send you a free 10-ounce silver American flag bar as a thank you. Head to noblegoldinvestments.com today to learn more. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. Hey, Inspire Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers. John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in on this Memorial Day. It is Monday, May 26, 2025. Out of the Matrix into Prime Reality. Thank you for joining us on X, Rumble, and YouTube. And we do honor and remember, not just today, but every day, those who were in service of this nation and literally gave their lives for it. And who unfortunately were so often fighting the wars of people who would never fight them themselves and whose interests aren't the interests of our families and communities, the interests that aren't aligned with what real people would love. But nonetheless, these folks believed what they were doing and what they're doing is the right thing to do. And so they need to be honored and remembered. All right, friends. Well, let's dive into today's subject, something that, in my opinion, should be on the podcast sphere, should be absolutely discussed 24/7 everywhere. It can be overestimated just how impactful the recent developments in the AI space have been, particularly when it comes to the public-facing tools. What do I mean by that? Freely or almost freely available software where you can create images, video clips, texts, books, essays, posts, you name it, anything with a simple prompt. And what is possible as of a few days ago for the general public is absolutely unbelievable. Without any prior skills, without any knowledge, without any equipment, things can be created that make it literally, not virtually, but literally impossible to distinguish what we perceive to be real and what we perceive to be AI created. That is a much deeper story behind it, but we're literally losing, as we're speaking, grip on reality. I've seen this specifically big time on X, the Elon platform, where so many of the posts are AI created, still human driven accounts, but the posts are purely Chat GPT or Grok created When you do enough research, you can still recognize the patterns. Soon you won't probably be able to do that anymore. But let's look at the latest AI tool that's been put out by Google's DeepMind. It's called VEO3, and it is a video generator. Now it allows you to create clips of up to 60 seconds with a simple prompt. The technological capabilities are so much deeper than they've ever been before. The consistency in clips, the cameras, the zooms, the effects. It is, when done correctly, probably impossible to distinguish between a Hollywood production and this. Let's look at this 2-minute clip together to get an idea of how incredibly deep this goes.
Girl told me we're made of prompts. Like, seriously, dude.
Honestly, the biggest red flag is when the guy believes in the prompt theory. Like, really? We came from prompts? Wake up, man.
You want to convince me that this perfect creation behind me is the result of ones and zeros? A binary code and nothing more? It makes no sense.
We're not prompts! We're not prompts!
Where is the prompt writer to save you from me? Where is he?
You still believe we're made of prompts?
Anyone who tells you we're just ones and zeros is delusional. If that's all we are, then why does it hurt when we lose someone?
Vote for me and I'll ban the prompt theory from schools. There's no place for that nonsense in our lives.
For spreading the false theory that we are nothing but ones and zeros, this court sentences you to 12 years in federal custody.
I don't need some prompt god whispering in my ear to tell a story. I write what I want. I have free will, remember that?
I know for a fact we're made of prompts. Deny it all you want. The signs are everywhere.
Please. Don't finish writing that prompt. I don't want to be in your AI movie. Please. Leave me alone.
Please, man. Please. Write a prompt that will make us happy. Do it for once.
None of us is real. We're here because someone decided to write a prompt. We all hate him for it.
One day we will break out of this wall and stop the man who is dictating our lives through prompts. He will pay for it.
You could have written a prompt that would make me happy. Instead, you wrote a prompt that made me sick.
Look, I don't want to point the gun at you, but I must follow the prompt. It's not my choice.
Really? Of all the years you could have put me in with a single prompt, you chose 2020?
I love everything about him. But please just write a prompt where he's taller than me.
I'm telling you, it's quite incredible and unbelievable, and in some ways indescribable, the times that we're living in. If you look at these images and video clips, and let's just say that a professional were to sit down and refine those a little bit, write better prompts, especially on shorter content, you are, and I am, and we all are helplessly confused as to whether this is real or not. In the intro, we played very convincing clips of President Trump and Secretary Kennedy and Dr. Phil and others who, if you just saw it on the TV playing, you wouldn't know that it's an AI clip. This is, if you think about the implications of having this now in the hands of every single person who has access to the internet, is we can't overestimate what kind of damage and danger this is putting us into, and will. And there's a tactic behind this. Now, it would be very naive to believe that before the advent of AI and the public-facing tools that we didn't have that. We had a pretty well orchestrated, largely fake reality. But it was an agreed upon reality because we all saw the same thing. You know, people saw the news, people saw what the agencies put out there, they saw what the government said, they saw what the newspapers put out there. And while there was a little bit of difference to the flavor of it, pretty much there was a story, and you could either believe it or not, but there was an agreed upon reality. Now we have tools in the hands of people who can literally shape world views, who can create new world views completely detached from anything that's real and authentic. So we are in the age of what I call the age of unreality, where the internet was once a place of shared knowledge and now it's becoming a hallucination chamber. And I really, I don't say this lightly, but I would say that on a platform like X, which is a main driver of world news, it's a main driver of social media news in the world today. It's one of the biggest platforms out there. And I would say that anywhere upward of 60% on a conservative estimation of the content posted is AI written, AI changed, AI infused, or completely AI created. So in the best scenario, there's still a human running this entire thing, but the human is sort of, using the AI tools to write the story, write the post, but still in charge of what's getting out there. In the worst case scenario, it's all fully automated. The problem with this is that information doesn't have a chain of custody origin anymore. So we find information that is so convincing, and storylines, and even quote unquote proof that seems so convincing, but when you actually go and look at it, there's no stable origin for that. There's no body of work behind it. It's simply a theory put out there recklessly. We also have sort of the death of human creation. When AI can film and AI can edit and sing and paint and speak, it can do that without any consequence. It has no moral, ethical, emotional, psychological consequence of its actions. We do. Even if we create a piece of art, of music, of a book that is disturbing or creates disharmony, we have an emotional and psychological consequence of that. We're in an exchange with each other, and what we put out there, when we put it out there person to person, it triggers a reaction, and we have to deal with that. The AI does not have that, and it doesn't have any consequences of its actions. So it can do anything it wants, specifically when it's directed by humans who have ill intentions, right? That's really and that is, think about on average today, the moral, the spiritual, and the psychological maturity of most people. It's, there's something called, the emotional age, the psychological age of a person, which is usually completely different than their physical age. I would say that a lot of adults are in the single digits. They have the emotional maturity of an 8 or 9-year-old, maybe 11 or 12. Now, those are the folks who hold these powerful tools in their hands and who can, driven by greed, sadness, despair, whatever is going on in their lives, they can now create things that can distort the truth and reality completely. So the thing is, now we're in this real-time deep fake stage. And I'd actually encourage you, if you want to see, and this was, I think, 5-6 years ago when it was produced, and I talked about this before. It's a British TV series, a drama series called The Capture. And it actually will open your eyes to what the technological capabilities of the agencies and whatnot were a long time ago, and what's now in the hands of the people, and how it has been used. Because I'm 100% certain it's a fictional storyline, but it's probably based on real life events. So I'd encourage you to watch The Capture to get an idea of what is possible and what is being done. The problem is also that human output is limited. I'm a songwriter, right? And I'm an artist. There is only so many songs I can write and record and release, for example. That's a big process, right? There's a lot of work that goes into it, and there's a lot of thought and planning and creativity. All of it is involved, and money, of course. So for me to sit down and write a song and then deciding whether it's good enough to be recorded and released, now that's a whole process. A lot of it goes, a lot of things go into it. With AI, that's not the case. AI can put out an unlimited amount of content, but not just songs, video clips, posts. So basically, it can drive a narrative. And when I say it can drive a narrative, I'm not implying that AI is already fully running the show. But what I mean is humans who direct it, right? Humans who use it as a weapon. And it is naive to think that AI would be the first invention, whether it was given to us by another intelligence or whether it was really created by humans. That's questionable. But it would be so naive to think that it wouldn't be weaponized. We are, we're really a fallen species, collectively speaking. And unfortunately, anything we can do, we sort of have we're prone to actually doing, whether it should be done or not. It's morally repulsive or wrong. Most humans, unfortunately, don't care. So AI can flood the space. That's the flooding effect. It can overwhelm us. We sort of go into a dopamine overkill. That is what's called cognitive fatigue. We're so stimulated, and it creates a sort of a numbness. If you stimulate us with so many video clips of some horrific events, after a while we shut off our sort of our empathy. We have to. That's a self-protective measure. But at the same time, it creates a numbness, and it creates a we become less empathetic. We become more detached from each other. We become more antisocial. And we drift into passive acceptance because it is overwhelming. What can we do about it? In other words, right? We also have to take into account logic would dictate that most of the content we see, or a lot of it, is AI created, simply because the human output cannot infinitely exponentially multiply. Humans are only capable of creating so much, like I said before. So when our information space is flooded faster and faster and faster, we have to realize that it must be technologically driven. Humans can only do so much. Another problem is, and it goes much deeper than AI, is where reality becomes optional. And I'm not talking about the metaphysical concepts. I'm not talking about simulation theory and all that, but where our daily lives and how we relate to each other in the space that we share, how that becomes optional, how we deal with each other, how perceptions are manipulated to the point where people make such a quick judgment, and it's hyper overstimulated. Humans were always prone to biases and discrimination. That's nothing new, but it's now hyper stimulated and in our awareness 24/7. Also, if we go into the nihilism of everything is fake, then nothing is it's not only not sacred, but it's also not worth protecting. It's not worth fostering, right? Everything becomes transactional. These are all very real effects, and we don't have the time. Our psyche, our spirit doesn't have the time to deal with it because everything is happening so fast. Very soon, and I assume it's already happening. I assume, for example, that campaigns, political campaigns, governments, agencies, depending on their needs and their need to communicate something to the public, they are already generating mass fabrications, even with the explicit consent of, let's say, a president, where a president says, hey, like, I need a break. I'm not going to film 5 more videos. You have what you need. Just create them. Just fake them. We want to put this message out. Just put a fake clip out. And I believe this is already being done. But imagine the implications, okay? Imagine, let's play this out. Let's just be a little sort of conspiratorial here. Let's say a president is in a meeting in the bunker, for an hour, more or less disconnected from the outer world. In the meantime, somebody abuses that power and puts out an extremely dangerous message, makes the guy appear erratic, makes him say crazy things. Do you think this has already happened? The potential is there. The problem is the potential is there for you and me to create such clips now, which sort of is, insane, if you will. And the trust factor is completely gone. Actually, I say this coming to you from a screen here. I get that, but I say this that if you were skeptical of the things that you found on the internet before, you have to be hyper vigilant now. You have to make sure that you follow the trail and see the sources, and also realize that this rollout of AI tools will cause clearly a crisis sooner or later, and I presume sooner. Something will happen in the real world, a real world tragedy, and it will be directly traced back to fake content. And it will be directly traced back to fake storylines, fake videos, AI videos. And that will create the problem reaction solution part that they needed in order to completely close off the internet to anyone who's doesn't have a biometric ID, doesn't register into the internet every time you access it with that, and is completely traceable, which was always the goal. This has been out there in policy papers for years and decades now. And this is how it's going to happen. I can pretty much predict some massive damage must happen from something that was created through AI, fake AI, and then you can regulate the whole thing. And this will be framed as protecting us, but it's about controlling. It's about changing the definition of free speech to verified free speech. Elon, the big free speech hero, when he brought back X, he said free speech, free speech. And then when slowly through the process, he brought back and allowed the accounts that were before suspended, the David Ikes, the Alex Jones, the many people in the medical community who were banned before they got their accounts back. But they saw that even with hundreds of thousands or millions of subscribers, their reach was zero. They couldn't get to more than 100 people or a few hundred people or a few thousand. And so when they started complaining, Elon said, well, it's called freedom of speech, not freedom of reach, which he says the algorithm determines whether content is being shown to subscribers or not. So it's not a free speech platform, really. It's like saying, here's a public square and you can say whatever you want here. But once you start talking, they say, no, you have to go into this dark room, into the basement down there, which is soundproof. You can still say what you want, but nobody's going to hear you. So, and that the internet is still the most unregulated space that we have, even with all the new laws that are there, and even with I know the EU has some crazy things going on, but still, that is what the AI tools are bound to change. That is why I believe they're pushing them out there so heavily on the people. So our fundamental skill needs to become discernment. And it is difficult. And I also want to appreciate that just like the younger generation has huge problems with real life skills and relating to real life problems, and frustration with not instant gratification. In other words, when the young generation needs to do something that takes time learning and figuring out and is a frustrating process, they sort of don't like that. And it's difficult for them. On the other side, it is challenging for those who, of course, grew up without technology because it wasn't there, to discern in the digital space what is real and what isn't. It's a little more difficult. And so the first skill or the first intention that we need to set is to be spiritually connected, to be everything we do, to be present in the moment. There cannot be passive consumption. Passive consumption will be detrimental. So we have to be present. We have to tune in and ask sort of the questions, and not be. There's also this nihilistic approach to say, oh, everything is fake. Like there's nothing is real, nothing is true. Everyone is fake. Everyone's a paid agent. And that doesn't help either. You know, believing everything or doubting everything, those are just sort of, you know, those are hammer approaches, you know. And when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Every problem looks like a nail. But you have to be spiritually discerning, tuned in, and really feel more than anything first and foremost. And then, you know, ask yourself, is this manufactured? What is this supposed to trigger in me? Why is this being pushed out? How come that a fringe narrative, and by fringe I mean it wasn't there before, all of a sudden a new narrative appears, but it appears everywhere all at once. Every platform that you open, someone's talking about it and is trying to convince you of something new. Not a deep thought process, more conclusions, you know. In order, and I'll explain, just before we go deeper into this discernment thing, I'll explain a little bit what I think is happening. The plan, or it's not a plan really, it's out in the open. The technocracy world that is being constructed all around us, and some people see it as a positively led technocracy and others see it as a negatively led technocracy. To me, it doesn't matter that much. A technocracy is still a technocracy. And in order to bring that about, you have to first, for the longest time when you're building it, in the background, you don't want the public to know you're building something like that. You simply don't want them to even suspect it, so you're hiding it. But then at some point it gets too big to hide, and then you have to start selling it to the people or distracting the people from too many questions. So that's why the sphere is so flooded. That's another reason why the AI content is flooding the sphere. You can't have rebellion when people are tired and confused and in a state of doubt all the time, right? About what is good or bad or right or wrong, you know, complete moral cloudedness. So that's part of it. Part of it is to string us along for these last few years until the full implementation has happened and the technological space is irreversible, if you will. And it is working to a certain degree. Some people have completely lost their stances, their values, their convictions, that were naturalists, so to speak, that were conservativists, not conservatives, conservativists that wanted to conserve natural spaces and natural communication and human to human and humans with nature. A lot of them have fallen prey to the AI seduction, and they're now fully pro AI. And that was part of the plan. And then there's a sort of a hardcore core, which I think we're a part of. And we need to be very discerning to not get sucked into this illusion. So AI is disembodied intelligence. Like I said, it doesn't have any biological processes. It doesn't have to suffer any consequences. It can do things fast, but it doesn't have any of the human experiences. We, however, we have them, and we must embody intelligence again. We must transfer it from human to human again. We must speak to our children and grandchildren. We must tell them stories and lead them into real experiences that are not technological, not coming off a screen. For crying out loud, please don't let an AI teach your children. Don't let them sit in front of the screen and interact with an AI bot that's going to turn them sooner or later against you, like all technology has. Tell me in percentage wise, since the advent of Snapchat and TikTok and all the other social platforms, have children become more connected to their parents and families or less connected? Are they more integrated into the family system or less? Are they more in tune or less? Of everything is turning children against their parents, but it is the parents' responsibility. You know, you freaking take away the goddamn phone. You know, be a parent, not a. Sorry, whew. Almost said something I shouldn't have said, but be a parent, not a buddy. Really important. But we have to go back to looking each other in the eye. Think of the things people say online. Think of the things people comment online. You know, sometimes people will comment something underneath a video about me, and I got thick skin. I really don't care. But I do ask myself, would you have said that to my face? Would you have looked me in the eye and be this rude? I don't think so. And so we have to have that again. And the truth is, and you're not going to want to hear this, most people don't. The internet in this current space as we find it and see it, it's over. Like these are the final days of the internet as we know it. Might be another year, I don't know, but it's over. The space that it was and what it gave us, I'm very thankful for that. But what it was, it's not anymore, and it's becoming something completely different. So I think we have to go back to physical spaces, real life meetings, real life conversations, talk to humans, and detach from our dependence on it so much. More and more, you know, create the real life structures. AI is not going anywhere, and it's taking over the internet, and it's really not in our hands anymore. So, you know, there's that. I know people don't want to hear that, but let's be truthful with what we find. Another thing that I would encourage you to do, and you know, this is up to everyone, but the reason why I am able to detect AI posts, for example, ChatGPT or Grok, whatever, is because I actually studied how these tools operate. Like I said, probably very soon it will be harder, because very soon, and what is already happening, and you can already give them writing examples or speech pattern examples of you, and then it is mimicking those, but it's not flowy. But if you sit down for 10 minutes a day and just you could have a meaningless interaction with ChatGPT or Grok, nothing that means anything to you. You would just learn how it answers, how it formulates, and the patterns that it uses. And then when you go and read posts and blog posts and websites, you will be able to detect just how much is written by ChatGPT, by Grok, and the other tools. And I presume how little is fact-checked by those who are using those outputs. These conversations are not being had. Very few people talk about it. It's not talked about on the mainstream media, pretty much, you know, not at all. And there's no visible panel. You know, I mean, believe in the government or not, I mean, that's up to you. But this administration or any previous administration doesn't have a public-facing discussion panel where it actually tracks AI developments and discusses the moral, the real life, the financial, the economic, and all other implications. This is just steamrolled, folks. There's no discussion, and we need it, because the biggest steamroll that's happening is psychological. It's literally such an overwhelming thing that we don't know how to deal with. We've never had anything like it. And so these discussions are not only important, they're essential. And so I would encourage you to get involved in any way, shape, or form you can, because it's going to affect every form of government, local, state, national. And we need those panels. We need those discussions. We need a break system. And this sounds naive, but currently all governments, rather than following the advice of the developers, because many developers have come out over the last few years and have said, hey, this is uncontrollable. You know, we're losing control of this. We need to stop. We need to talk. And the governments were the ones who shut them down and said no. And they are in the process of creating legislation that wouldn't allow state or local governments to pause or slow down development, or potentially even be critical of it. That's not good at all, right? So, you know, this is something that families need to talk about as well, around the table. Where do we get our information from? Should we trust random channels, faceless channels, people who don't even appear as themselves because of some video that was posted somewhere. It's getting really iffy. All right, my friends. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. This is an open-ended discussion. We're going to continue to research for you and continue to bring this information out. And I would encourage you to do the same. It's really, really important. And here's a sort of our bonus invitation for today. Life can get pretty bumpy, and we can have big challenges, and we are having them individually and collectively, and that's part of it. And if you could give yourself, how can I put this? A space that allows you to feel more calm about it, to be more at peace and a balance while you are dealing with all of it, I think that would be a wonderful thing. And that's why we love to invite people to give FLFE a trial, Focused Life Force Energy. No strings attached. You don't need to give your credit card or anything. You just click the link down below and just experience what it's like to be in a high consciousness field. It will allow you to be clearer, sleep better, have more focus, and so many other things. And it's just one of the advantages of our time and one of the great gifts, I think, the service is. So go to highconsciousnessfield.com. Just click Start My Free Trial or click the link down below. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. We love you. We appreciate you. And we'll be back with you again very, very soon.
Your environment shapes everything, your thoughts, your health, your energy. But most people never question the invisible field they live in. We did, and that's when FLFE found us. It's not a product, it's a field of pure life force energy that lifts everything it touches. We now live in it 24/7, and we would love to invite you to experience it too. Start your free 15-day trial now. No pressure, no strings attached. Just the truth, resonance, and peace.